Sup, guys? I don't even know what to think anymore. I don't know how this is going to end. I think this is just a completely lost Major League Baseball season, a lost year. Can't get a single bet right, even when it looks like the bet is going to win. So, full disclosure, I did not play those extra games yesterday with the Red Sox or the Royals, excuse me, and the White Sox. Those would have gone 1-1, which would have been a slight additional loss. So I guess I lucked out there. But the other bets, the bets that I actually had, should have gone 1-1. With Sonny Gray, that was a loss with the Cardinals, even though he pitched pretty well. Kyle Hendricks pitched way better than I expected. Did not expect that. But then the Toronto game, that absolutely should have been a Toronto win. That is unbelievable how they lost that game. They had a 4-2 lead going into the bottom of the eighth, and they gave up 2 runs in the bottom of the eighth and then another one in the ninth, losing on a walk-off. Arizona won 5-4, and I think they only had 6 hits in the game. Toronto out-hit them 8-6. Arizona had 6 hits and scored 5 runs. It's just ridiculous. We'll move on to today. I got 3 plays, and I'm really factoring in the market reads a bit into this. So I have a few additional leans that I'm just keeping off the card. And some of the games that I'm going to be on have actually moved in the market, but I'm still just jumping on them, hopefully before they move further, I guess I would say. But I do have some leans in some of these other ones. I do lean to Cincinnati, but they're just very public, and you're kind of laying a price for it. They're down, actually, from minus 160 to minus 155. 88% of the tickets, 95% of the cash on them, even though the lines moved down. So I don't know if that cash percentage is really accurate, but the line we've seen has moved against them a little bit. But this is Andrew Abbott for Cincinnati. He's pitched well this season. He's up against Edward Cabrera. Abbott, I think, has the upper hand in this matchup. I don't think it's really that close. And like I said, he's putting together a good season. His one drawback is he's not a really good strikeout guy, but he's got a low whip, 1.17, 3.06 ERA, keeping guys off the base paths. And Miami has never faced him before. So he has the advantage there, too. When you have a good pitcher who's like a staple of the rotation like this, and Miami just has never faced him before, I think that's an extra advantage to Abbott there, especially against the Miami offense. It's not very good. Miami's got Edward Cabrera pitching. He does have good stuff, but it just hasn't really translated into success for the most part over his career. He had a good 2022 season, but other than that, his stats have not been good in the majors. He's struggling badly this year so far. He started out the season, then I think he was on the DL, and he just came back, and that wasn't good either. He had a bad, shortened start kind of against the White Sox. He threw 82 pitches and only 3 2/3 in that one, allowing 4 hits, 2 earned runs, a home run, a walk. Did have 4 strikeouts. He struggled against a bad White Sox team this entire season. If you exclude the first game that he had, which was a really good start, his first start of the season against the Giants, other than that, he's only gone 5 innings in one of his other starts. In 5 starts, that's not good either. His walk number is just way, way, way too high, even though his strikeout number is high. He's got a 1.56 ERA, 6.84 ERA, and he has never recorded an out against Cincinnati, so there is that. But most of Cincinnati's offense hasn't faced him. Only Heimer Candelario has ever faced him before, and he's 2 for 2 off him with a double. So I don't know what we could take away from that, but I do think Abbott has the upper hand there, but it's not one I quite want to jump in. And then I do also like the Washington side, but I would not play this full game because Washington used a lot of their bullpen, more than Milwaukee did yesterday. So I would take the bullpen side of the equation if I wanted to play this one. I would play Washington first 5 inning, and this is one that almost made my card. Milwaukee is only a small favorite, down from minus 125 to minus 122. I haven't looked, but I presume that they're a smaller favorite in the first 5 innings because the books know this is a starting pitching mismatch. Milwaukee's public was 72% of the tickets, but it looks like they have 93% of the cash, even though the line has moved down. So kind of similar market read to Cincinnati, but I agree with the other side against the market in this one. So I don't know what we can take away from that either. I'm just looking at the starting pitching matchup, man. And this is Mitchell Parker for Washington. I mean, he's a guy I talk about a lot on the show. He's in his rookie season. He's having a good season, 3.44 ERA, 1.09 whip. I lost going with him in the previous game. He got absolutely no run support. He had a really nice 7-inning start, 6-1 strikeout walk ratio, only allowing 6 hits, 1 earned run in that game against St. Louis, and he just got no run support at all, and the bullpen fell apart behind him too, but he's pitched well. Doesn't have a huge strikeout rate, but he has good control. He doesn't allow a lot of hits, doesn't allow a lot of walks. He's been good, and the Milwaukee Brewers have never seen him before, so he's got that built-in edge there where the opposing lineup has not seen him before, so that's an extra edge to Mitchell Parker. And then on the other side, Dallas Keuchel is pitching for Milwaukee. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that they brought this guy back, to be honest. I was kind of thinking his career had ended. No offense to him, but he hasn't been a very successful pitcher in a long, long time. I guess you could say his 2020 was somewhat successful in a shortened season with the White Sox. I don't even know if you can really factor that in. Like, as far as full seasons really go, he hasn't been good since being on Houston way back in the day in like the 20 teens. He's just not cutting it anymore. He's never really been a guy, I don't think, that comes in and just blows people away. He's always had a low strikeout rate, but he's got a 4.61 ERA this year, 1.68 WHIP. I mean, that's not good. Just doesn't look great overall for him. Although he just came back. He's only made 3 starts this season, but he's only gone more than 4 1/3 innings in 1 out of the 3. His last start, you might think it looks good because he didn't allow any runs against the Dodgers, and they won the game, but he only went 4 1/3, and he walked 5 guys and didn't strike out anybody. So that those stats really are not good. Even though he held the Dodgers off the scoreboard, that's still not good. He's got a 9-8 strikeout walk ratio and allowed 15 hits in 13 2/3 in a small sample size so far this season. It's just not good for Keuchel. He's a very old junk pitcher at this point. His stats against Washington, we don't have a huge sample size here with only 5 of their hitters having seen him before, but Patrick Corbin is listed on here, so he's a pitcher, so you can throw him out. So he's 0 for 3 off him with a strikeout. So if you want to take him out of the stats here, which I think is obviously reasonable because Corbin's not going to be batting here, then Washington only has 4 hitters who have faced Keuchel before ever, and they are 7 for 19 off him with 3 doubles, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, and then whatever that translates to a batting average, it's over 300 for sure, and the OPS is probably close to like 900. So his stats against Washington, not good. But because of the bullpen scenario, like I mentioned, I would make that a first 5-inning play on Washington in that one. And then do I have any other leans? Those are like the strongest ones, like ones that almost made my card. The actual card, I'm definitely looking at the market here. First up is going to be a play on the Cleveland Indians. They've flipped from dog to a favorite. So they're actually a road favorite against Tampa Bay here. They've gone from plus 105 to minus 106, 65% of the tickets on them, but 77% of the cash. So I do think there is legitimate market movement on the Cleveland side here, even though they are a little bit public because they do have the better record than Tampa. So that's going to be the case. But like I said, in the market, they flipped to a favorite. If you get them at anywhere around like a price, excuse me, that's like close to just picking them to win the game, I think that's fine. You can find them at like minus 105 right now. And like I just mentioned, we've seen more of the cash than the tickets on Cleveland. And I do agree with it. I think they're the better team. They obviously have the way better offense, so that's an advantage too. But that's factored into the line. Tampa shut them out last night. Tampa was coming off beating the Yankees in a series, and they didn't suffer a letdown and beat Cleveland. But it was a situation where Tampa had Taj Bradley pitching. He's putting together a really nice season. He had a really good outing yesterday. So I don't know what we can take away from that, really. Tampa did only use 2 of their relievers, whereas the Indians used 3 of their relievers, but I don't think that that's going to factor in. I still think we can make a full game play out of this because I wouldn't really trust Tampa Bay's bullpen that much, really, even though I don't know if either of these bullpens are really that good, but the bullpen usage yesterday, it was more for Cleveland for sure. I mean, they threw like 60 pitches, whereas Tampa only threw like 30, but I don't think that factors in that much into the full game play here because Cleveland had to use them a little bit more in relief of Carrasco, who's not really that good, although he didn't pitch that badly against a Tampa offense that isn't very good. But now we have a different scenario here, of course. The starting pitching matchup yesterday favored Tampa, but today it does not. And maybe Tampa will finally run into like a delayed letdown scenario, although their offense wasn't clicking yesterday. So maybe that was kind of a letdown, but they won the game in a shutout, so they're not going to be like in a bounce back scenario here. It might be Cleveland who's in the bounce back spot here. Cleveland has Gavin Williams pitching. He's got a 4.82 ERA and 1.5 whip. So we might be getting a little bit of value on Cleveland because of that, because his numbers don't look good so far. But he's only made 2 starts this season. He's a young 24-year-old guy. He came off the DL, and they put him right back in the rotation. And he started out with a bad start against the White Sox. There's no denying that. Gave up 5 earned runs, 7 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts in a 4-inning performance. But maybe he was just readjusting, reacclimating. And at the very least, he's trending in the right direction, because he went on the road after that and put together a much nicer start against Detroit, going 5 1/3, allowing 4 hits, no earned runs, a 5-1 strikeout walk ratio. So doing much better in that one, and just didn't get any run support behind him. So I think he's trending in the right direction. I think last year's stats are probably more of an indicator of what we can expect out of him, where his whip was high to my liking. Yeah, 1.26, but he did have a 3.29 ERA, so he wasn't bad. And that was a rookie season. So you might expect him to start like maybe getting a little bit better as well, if he's actually as good as Cleveland thinks that he is. And yeah, last year he had too many walks, 37 walks, 81 strikeouts in 82 innings. So his strikeout rate has been pretty good. His walk rate too high. So he's got to get that control down. But I like him better in this matchup. Tampa is only 3 for 12 off him lifetime with 2 doubles. No other extra base hits. He's got a 7-0 strikeout walk ratio against them. So almost all the outs have been by way of the K, which is kind of crazy. And he's held Tampa to a pretty low 250 average and 667 OPS. So that's good. So I think Williams, he's a guy who's like on the upward trajectory, I would say, very young in his career. And I think we might start seeing him improve a bit in his career, whereas he's up against Zach Littell on the other side. And I'm not very impressed by Littell. And you might look at him and say, well, he's got an okay 4.44 ERA. Yeah, but he's also got a 1.37 whip, which is indicating that there's something a little bit wrong right now. And that's the fact that he's been way too hittable. He's got a good 91-17 strikeout walk ratio. That's good in 95 1/3 innings. He hasn't allowed a lot of walks, but he's been hanging it out over the plate, man, because he's allowed 13 home runs and 114 hits. He's been getting hit, and that was the case in his last outing, too, at Texas. It's not an easy place to play, but he got rocked, giving up 7 earned runs and 9 hits in 4 innings and had a 5-1 strikeout walk ratio, which is, based on his season stats, that's a very Littell-esque performance, really. And if you go back a ways, you have to go all the way back to June 9th to find a start where he went more than 5 innings. So he hasn't really been giving them deep outings for the most part either. So that's not really the greatest sign either, even though his strikeout walk ratio is good. But these other indicators aren't as good. And against Cleveland, we have a small sample size. 5 of their hitters have seen him before, but they've hit him well. They're 6 for 15 off him with 2 doubles, 3 RBIs, 1 strikeout, 1 walk, 400 batting average, and 971 OPS. So the starting pitching matchup, I do actually think, is in favor of Gavin Williams, even though it might not look like it on the surface. So he might have a hidden edge there a little bit with Gavin Williams. So that's play number 1, is going to be on Cleveland to bounce back from that shutout. And then, of course, Cleveland has the better offense, like I said. So that is kind of a big factor here, too. But that's sort of also factored into the historical stats that these pitchers have against the opposing hitters. I forgot to mention, I will say, Christian Scott is pitching for the Mets here. That's the next game on the schedule here below the Cleveland game there. I just noticed it. But the Mets, I think, are just way too heavy a favorite. But I would only want to get involved somehow on the Mets side there, because Christian Scott's the way better pitcher over Ryan Feltner. Feltner, I think, has bad stats against the Mets, too. And Scott is a rookie who's never been seen before by Colorado. And he's been putting up pretty decent numbers for a rookie. So I would only look to the Mets side in that one, but you're paying a huge price for it. So just kind of ignoring that. Moving on to play number 2, which is going to be on the San Diego Padres against the Atlanta Braves in a pretty big matchup here. The market is kind of indicating all over San Diego, man. And the line, you've lost a little bit of value on San Diego, but I still think it makes sense. They've flipped from an underdog to a favorite. They were plus 115 at one point, and they're all the way up to minus 126 now. So it's getting to the point where you might even want to have to split like a run line play, but I think laying minus 126 is fine. I think that's one of the higher money line prices that I would want to lay, but you're still just asking them to win the game. And the market, like I said, is strongly indicating on San Diego from what I can see here. So that is the way that we will go here. They have flipped to the favorite. Then the line has moved pretty significantly on them with 57% of the cash on San Diego, but 71% of the tickets on the other side on Atlanta. So this looks like pros versus Joes, man, with the Joes, the recreational bettors coming in more on the Atlanta side. But we see the money in total conflict with that and moving the line pretty significantly on San Diego. I like the San Diego side here. They lost yesterday 6-1. They're on a bad 5-game losing streak, and we are bucking that and expecting them to turn this around. But San Diego, I mean, they haven't been that bad at home, man. So I expect this to turn around a bit and then to bounce back from a pretty bad one-run performance last night against Atlanta. I think the bullpens, we can kind of just yeah, I mean, the bullpen rest scenarios at least kind of even with both teams using 2 of their relief pitchers yesterday. Braves, I think, used theirs for a few more pitches maybe, but it was very close yesterday. Both teams kind of had the same bullpen usage. I think the Braves do have the better of the 2 bullpens somewhat, but I think we can go full game on this one. I wouldn't mind first 5 inning either because I do think that San Diego does have the advantage in the starting pitching matchup as well. But San Diego's offense isn't that bad either. So I think we're on even footing here as far as most of the factors are in this game, except I think San Diego actually has a pretty decent starting pitching edge here. And you might not notice, or you might not think that, as the public is coming in on Ronaldo Lopez here, and he's got a 1.71 ERA. I don't see how that can continue, and a 1.13 whip, which is good, but there's no way that indicates that you should have a 1.71 ERA. Nobody can maintain a 1.71 ERA throughout the course of a season, man, especially not when you're walking as many guys as Lopez is. He's got a 93-34 strikeout walk ratio. So the strikeouts are high, but the walk number is really high. And he's allowed a very low 67 hits in 89 2/3 innings pitched. That walk number is so high that it's like something has to give, man. And he's got a 12-7 strikeout walk ratio in the month of July so far. And 2 outings where he's gone 10 1/3 over 2 outings, which isn't that good either. Allowed 2 earned runs, 2 home runs, 6 hits. So it's looking like he should have allowed more runs than that in those outings. His outing against San Francisco is really not good. And then he turned it around, had a good outing, only allowing 2 hits and no earned runs, but 3 walks, 6 strikeouts against Philly. But he might be in line for a bit of regression here, man, and maybe even be in a letdown spot coming off a really good performance against the Braves' main competition in their division there. And now he's having to go play on the road on the Pacific Coast against the Padres. Maybe not as good a spot here. And the Padres did just also see him on May 20th. And he pitched decently against them at home with a 4-1 strikeout walk ratio, 6 1/3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs allowed. So a good start for sure for a Lopez in that one, but still with that recent familiarity, I think the Padres actually might have a little bit of an extra benefit there, a little bit of an extra edge there, having just seen Lopez not that long ago. And Lopez's stats overall, even including that start against the Padres, are not great. They're not bad, but they're not great either. They've hit him well. They're 18 for 69 off him with 3 doubles, although only 1 RBI, no other extra base hits. They've hit him all right. They do have a 15-2 strikeout walk ratio against them, though. 261 batting average and 586 OPS, so it is a pretty low OPS. Does that concern me? Maybe a little bit, but I just think we have the edge on the other side, man. And Dylan Cease, even though I lost going with him in his last outing, people are going to look at this and think that Lopez is the better pitcher because his ERA is so much better. Cease has a 4.21 ERA, but he actually has the lower whip at 1.10, and he actually has a better strikeout rate too, and a much, much better walk rate and a similar hit rate. So Cease is the better pitcher, man. He's the one that's keeping the walk rate lower and striking out more, and he's allowing basically as few hits as Lopez is, and Cease is going deeper into games for the most part too. 138 strikeouts and 33 walks for Cease. 15 home runs allowed. That's kind of been his sticking point. That's kind of the one bad stat that he has there is the 15 home runs. That's not great, but 87 hits allowed and 109 innings pitched. He's got a 13-3 strikeout walk ratio in the month of July so far, and 13 hits allowed, but he's allowed 9 earned runs and 10 2/3. So that's not good, but most of that was because he had a really bad start at Texas, which was surrounded by 2 pretty good starts against Washington and Arizona, even though I had him in the Arizona game and he didn't do well. The final score was not indicative of Cease's performance. And the bullpen came in and got lit up for like 6 additional runs. He gave up 3 earned runs in that game, and 2 of them were by way of the long ball, basically. So he only allowed 5 hits in 7 innings and had an 8-1 strikeout walk ratio. So he did not pitch badly in that game. He's got kind of ace-like stuff this season, man. And against the Braves, even though they have a good offense, he's pitched pretty well, even though his OPS is higher than Lopez's is against San Diego's. I think a lot of it is just from the home run ball, and I think the home runs are more of the fluky stat. So, again, I tend to look a little bit more to the batting average than to the rest of the stats. So Cease against Atlanta, they're 12 for 52 off him lifetime with 4 home runs, 10 RBIs, 12-7 strikeout walk ratio. That doesn't look good, but 3 of the walks are from Zach Short. So I don't know what that's about. So if you take him out, the walk numbers look a lot better. It's only a 231 batting average. So that's quite low, significantly lower than Lopez's batting average against San Diego. But Cease's OPS is higher at 795, which is a little bit worrisome, getting into the high territory, but it's because of the home runs, man. And if he can keep that in check, and we're talking about San Diego's ballpark here, man, where I think you can keep the home run ball in check a bit easier in Petco Park there. It's more of a pitcher-friendly park there. So I'm doing it. I'm going with Cease in that one. I think he's the better pitcher overall. Looking at the overall stats this season, I think it's a hidden edge there with the ERAs being very misleading. So I like Cease there, and the market seems to really agree with it on that one. And then finally, I'm going with a young guy who I mentioned because I had the under in the last game this guy was pitching in. And did I have the under? Or no, that might have been the game where it didn't happen because the starting pitching matchup changed. I forget. But this is Toronto and Arizona's got Yilbert Diaz pitching, man. And this is why I'm going to jump back on with Yilbert Diaz here, man. And this is Barrios against Diaz for Toronto. This looks like another strong market indicator going on Arizona, where they're up from -110 all the way up to now -136. So it's getting into that range where you might want to actually, in this one, really think about splitting half on the run line, half on the money line. If it gets above -130, that's basically my cutoff where I start doing that. You can still get -130 on the money line on Arizona here. So I don't mind doing that either. So that's probably the way I would go here, man. Arizona's only got 59% of the tickets. So even though they do have the better record, they're slightly public, but the books are telling you they're not anywhere near as public enough because the line has moved way up on them. And they also have 91% of the cash. So the public might be swayed a little bit off of Arizona by having no idea who Diaz is and knowing who Barrios is and knowing that Barrios puts up decent numbers. That might be the way that they're going to go there. I don't like it at all, man. I think a lot of the scenario here, including the starting pitching matchup, is actually in favor of Arizona. Arizona, like I said, they beat me last night, and it should not have been the case, scoring 3 runs in the final 2 innings to overcome a 2-run deficit right near the end, even though they didn't even have the hits really to indicate that they should have scored that many runs. But what happened in that game was the Blue Jays, after Rodriguez only went 4 innings, so he actually didn't have a great start. He actually got outpitched by Ryan Nelson, which is really bad. So even though I'm complaining about it, and when it came to the end of it, yeah, Toronto still should have won the game because their middle relief guys there kept them in the game, and they were winning the game and had a really good shot to win the game, winning by 2 runs in the 8th inning. I mean, you can't lose that game. But because that's the way it happened, Toronto wound up using so many of their relief pitchers. They used some of their better relievers who blew the game in the end, and they used 5 of their relief pitchers, and their bullpen isn't really that great, and they used like all of their better relievers last night in that game only to blow the game. That's got to take a lot out of you too, man, when you think you have the win too against the team that won the NL last year, and you just blow it, and it's like nothing's going right, man. You just can't win these games. I think that puts the Blue Jays in a bad spot here, man, possibly mentally, after you implode like that and blow the game like that, and you've used all your relief pitchers. Basically, that's not a good scenario. And Arizona only used 2 of their relief pitchers yesterday, so their bullpen is going to be in the better rest spot here for sure, using far fewer relief pitchers. And then the starting pitching matchup, you got Barrios, who, like I said, the recreational bettor might come in and look and say, yeah, Barrios has good numbers this year. He does. 3.76 ERA, 1.13 whip. He's a staple of this Toronto rotation, man. He's pitching well. 87 to 29 strikeout walk ratio. That's good. Only 101 hits allowed, 115 innings pitched. He's not a big strikeout guy, but he's allowed 21 home runs. And when you're talking about a home run ballpark here like Arizona, that's not great if you're giving up that many long balls. Berrios has given up, he has one of the highest home run allowed rates, I think, in baseball. That's a lot of home runs to have given up so far, man. And the strikeout walk ratio isn't that great just because the strikeout numbers are kind of low. And he is coming off a really good strikeout performance, a 10-1 strikeout walk ratio in 6 innings, but it's against a kind of weak hitting Seattle team. And he still allowed 4 runs in that game and allowed 2 home runs to them. So again, the home run ball kind of affecting him. He had a fairly high pitch count for what he usually does. He usually kind of goes 80s, 90s, and he threw 98 in that one and had a pretty decent start with a lot of strikeouts. So there's a potential he could kind of be gassed coming out of that. And over the last few starts, he's kind of alternated better and worse starts. He had a bad start at Cleveland, who have good offense, did well against the Yankees after that, decently enough, who also have a good offense. Then he had a bad start against Houston, who, yeah, they have a good offense too. And then had a better start in that one I just mentioned against Seattle, who don't really have a good offense. So if that trend continues, he's also kind of in line for maybe a worse start here against Arizona. And against Arizona's hitters, they've been able to hit him all right in their careers. They're 10 for 37 off him lifetime with 5 doubles. No home runs somehow, although maybe that'll change in this game because he's allowed a lot of them this year. 2 RBIs, 8-2 strikeout walk ratio, but it's a pretty decent 270 batting average, but a 713 OPS, which is a little bit on the low-ish side. Certainly not high, but still. Arizona's seen him before, and they've been able to hit him. And the familiarity aspect to this, I think, kind of factors in. Like I was mentioning with Lopez, by the way, with that familiarity, which, by the way, Cease did also face Atlanta in mid-May, by the way. I forgot to mention that. He didn't do well in that game. He went only 4 innings and really got lit up in every way, gave up 9 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 walks. 2 home runs. So he gave up too many home runs too and had 5 strikeouts. So a lot of strikeouts still. But Cease, so even though that does mean that Atlanta is familiar with him and has seen Cease recently as well. But I do think that means that maybe Atlanta is overconfident because they rocked him so hard in that game. And it was at Atlanta. Maybe Cease will be thinking about that and kind of turn it around and have more of a move back to like kind of the mean for him, which would be to have a better outing because that was one of his worst outings. So I think Cease might actually kind of return back to form after that. But anyway, back to this game. You have Berrios, who is familiar somewhat with 2 Arizona's hitters, I should say. And on the other side, of course, Yilbert Diaz, completely unfamiliar to these opposing hitters, man. He's made 1 start in his career so far, and it was a good major league debut, man, against that Atlanta team I was just talking about, who have a good offense. And Diaz really pitched well against them, going 6 innings, only allowing 4 hits, 1 earned run on a solo homer, 5-1 strikeout walk ratio. That's a good sign. If you come into your major league debut and you do that well against one of the best offenses in baseball, that's certainly not a bad sign. Giving him a 1.5 ERA and 0.83 whip. Yeah. I mean, of course, that's going to regress somewhat. And he is facing another good offense here. But again, I think he has a little bit of the upper hand just because he has good stuff. And the Blue Jays have not seen him before. As I mentioned when I talked about Diaz before, he doesn't have a deep arsenal. He only has like a couple off-speed pitches, but he does have a really good fastball. If I remember correctly, I think that was Diaz I was talking about. He can throw pretty hard, throw the fastball by people, and then if those off-speed pitches are working decently enough, he can get something going. And I think that may be what he may be able to continue to do here. So he doesn't need to pitch as well, really, as he did in that other game, as long as Berrios gets tagged a little bit in this one as well. I like Arizona in this one. And then if the game is close enough and it gets into the bullpens, like I said, Arizona's bullpen rest scenario is that puts them at an advantage as well after yesterday's game. And I think just the mental state of how these teams are going to be after Toronto just imploded and blew basically what was a sure win when it came down to the bottom of the 8th there. And they just blew it in walk-off fashion. I think that might affect Toronto more than it does Arizona, whereas Arizona might realize, hey, we just got away with something against a team that doesn't have a good records. That might actually focus Arizona more, whereas Toronto was thinking we just beat the NL champs, or we were about to beat the NL champs and should have had the win and fell short, and that might affect them more negative mentally. I think that's all. I mean, that's what I got to say about this today, man. That's going to do it for me, man. A lot of information today. Big, full Saturday baseball card. So my plays are, and these are all backed up by market indicators, man. Somehow we got to turn it around. This has been a slow plummet where I'm just like, I'm reeling right now, man. This has just been absolutely ridiculous how crazy bad this has been. This has been an awful, awful month. I just don't even understand how this is continuing to happen. Cleveland Indians minus 105, San Diego Padres minus 126, Arizona Diamondbacks minus 130. I'm not fucking around. Just 3 money line plays. Fuck it. Do it. Let's get some fucking wins. I want to see a 3-0. I'm just so fucking fed up with this. I'm sick of this shit. Something's got to happen. Come on. Peace.